No, I'm looking at the comments, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So let's go live officially. It's 9 p.m. So a very warm welcome to all of you for yet another session of Saturdays with Sourish. And today we have a very, very special guest, Dr. Prabhat Ranjan. And I am going to give a very brief introduction about him. And he's extremely accomplished person, and we are extremely lucky to have him tonight. It's very difficult to get hold of him. And so Dr. Ranjan, he started out with, he's a physicist by training. And his research area to begin with was in plasma physics, right, Prabhat?
Yes.
Just let me know if I'm incorrect. Yeah, and he did his PhD from University of Berkeley in University of California, Berkeley, UCB, and that's in the United States. That was long back. How long back was that, Prabhat?
1981 to 86, I was there, so it's almost 34, 35 years. Yeah, you can say 40 years ago. 40 years ago, around the time you were born.
Right. Actually, yes, around the time when I was born. And that was the time when Prabhat did, Dr. Ranjan did his PhD from UCB. And then after that, he came over to India and he joined one of the most eminent plasma research and nuclear research lab. And that's in Saha Institute of Nuclear Physics. And that's in India, in Kolkata, right?
Yes.
Should we call it Kolkata? Salt Lake, yeah. And then from there onwards, his journey went into many different directions, and somehow he came to the western part of India from the eastern part, and he somehow found his way into the university where I belong to, which is Dhirubhai Ambani Institute of Information and Communication Technology. That's in the western part of India, in Gujarat. And he stayed there for a long period of time, did so many different things. And we will listen to all these things, starting from the Berkeley days to everything. And then finally, all of a sudden, we came to hear that Prabhat became the director of TIFAC. For those people who don't know what TIFAC is, TIFAC, TIFSE, is the think tank of what India should be doing at the technological level for the next 5 years or the next 5 to 5 years and so on. And TIFAC is the office with whom the president and the prime minister would be consulting on a regular basis in terms of what would be the plan, what would the 5-year future plan in terms of technology, where should India go. So Prabhat was the director, the chair director of that office. And an office which had been held by celebrities, including Sam Pitroda. So Prabhat was over there, and then after that, Prabhat did a lot of other interesting things. A lot of social commitment. I mean, we will get to see that. So many social commitments and so many social driven research that Prabhat does all the time, even now. And then finally, he is currently the Vice Chancellor of D.Y. Patil International University. And I guess that's in Pune, Prabhat, right? Right. And Pune is in Maharashtra. That's again in India. So he's the Vice Chancellor over there. So over to Prabhat. Prabhat, if you can just tell us a little bit about your very early life and how you went to, what propelled you to go to Berkeley and do your PhD in the particular area in which you did. So if we can start with that.
Sure. So before I forget, there's something very important. One is a special day, not because I'm here, but it's your birthday and it's 40th birthday. So I'm honored to be here. The second thing, it's a very special year for plasma physics, because two things happened 100 years ago. Okay. One was Saha ionization equation was declared by Dr. Meghnad Saha in 1920. That is considered the beginning of plasma physics. The second thing that happened in the same year was Arthur Eddington discovered that stars have energy from nuclear fusion. Both of these
Okay.
happened 100 years ago. So the whole plasma physics and the nuclear fusion started 100 years, exactly 100 years ago. This is a very special year. And I'll come back to this point later on, but I thought I must not
Yeah.
forget because when I came back from
Surely.
US, I
Surely.
joined Saha Institute of Nuclear Physics, which was set up by Dr. Meghnasa. So let me come
Right.
back to this. So I used to study in a school from age of 10, which was a very different kind of a school. I was away from my parents and everybody. We used to live in forest. We used to live in ashrams actually. It was Gurukul style. And I
Yeah.
must emphasize, we used to do all the work by ourselves. We used to clean dishes, clean toilets, everything used to be done by ourselves. That was a very important learning for me. And this place is called Netarhat School. It's still there. Then, when I was there only around age of 12, I decided that I'll be going into research. I was very good in mathematics and physics, and
Mhm.
somehow I felt that mathematics is good, but physics is more closer to reality, so I should be in physics. And then I moved to IIT Kharagpur,
Right.
and I wanted to go into physics, but the IT people were not wanting to give me physics. They were telling me, forcing me to take engineering, and I was insisting that I must take physics. So they
Yeah.
finally then they offered me a compromise solution. They said that electrical engineering is very close to physics, so it's
Mm.
better that you join electrical engineering, and then later on, if you want to change to physics, we can do that, but not
Mhm.
other way around. Okay. So they put me
Mm.
admitted into electrical engineering, but the very first day I joined, I said that please change me to physics, and so they took about 15 days. So I changed over to
Right.
physics. And then I moved to Delhi University to do my master's in physics because Delhi University had a lot more options compared to IIT Kharagpur. And so I moved there for my
Mm.
master's. And then I applied to
Mm.
US and I got admission University of California, Berkeley, to cut short the story. And my work was actually related to astrophysics and black holes. So in master's time, I was doing that kind of work. All of my
Mhm.
specialization was in that. I worked with Dr. Narlikar, J.V. Narlikar, who is considered one of the pioneers of cosmology. His steady state theory of the universe was very
That
popular.
was that was during when you were in Berkeley and you were
No, no,
working with
no. When I was in masters in Delhi University, my
okay.
specialization was in astrophysics. My the papers, the special papers that took optional papers was astrophysics, general theory of relativity, and my admission was on that basis also to Berkeley. And I worked in the summer of 1981 with Dr. Narlikar also on black holes and so
Okay.
on.
Wow.
So all my plan was that my statement of purpose was based on that. But the night that I was going to fly out of India, and I was waiting in Delhi, the night flight was at 4 a.m. That was my very first flight of the life. I was to fly to Tokyo and then had an overnight halt and then to go to San Francisco. One of my
Okay.
uncles, who had paid half of my travel money, he asked me this. So we were waiting in Jawaharlal Nehru University campus. One of my uncle was there. There were 20, 30
Okay.
people who had come to see me off. My uncle asked me that what kind of research you're going to do. At that midnight, suddenly something struck me that will astrophysics help India when I do research in that? So somehow I don't know what happened. I replied to him that either I'm going to work in nuclear fusion or in space physics, which I had never thought about. I had never thought about this, but something happened at midnight when I was about to leave the country. And I
Hmm.
mentioned this to him. And then I went to Berkeley. I did attend the astrophysics seminars and other things. But then I eventually landed up doing nuclear fusion research. And that's how I landed up doing that. Many of these stories are part of my blog. So some of those who are interested, actually,
Right.
you can look at
Right.
it
I will
closely.
be sharing. I will be sharing the blog.
Right, right. So
With
that's how I
our
got into
audience.
nuclear fusion. That's how I got into nuclear fusion. And probably I was the first one to do PhD from India in nuclear fusion, actually. Luckily, when I finished my PhD and I planned to come back to India, nuclear fusion work had started in India, right? 1980s. I came back in 1986 after my PhD. So I could actually contribute to that area. Otherwise, I had no idea as to what is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And Prabhat, tell us something about, like, when you were going to US and when you were studying there in US, like, was it always within you that I have to do something, I have to come back and I have to do something for my homeland?
Yeah, that particular thought that I had at midnight when I was leaving the country was actually directed towards helping the country develop. And that's how I changed my field, in spite of the fact that all my preparation was for astrophysics and so on. So when I went to Berkeley, in my mind, it was never there that I'm going to stay in US. I had gone there to finish my PhD. I finished my PhD and I came back to India immediately, even though I did not have a proper job or anything like that. I was not sure what kind of facility I would have. I was working on the fastest computers of the world, Cray 1 and Cray 2 at that time.
Wow, wow.
But in India, when I came back, there was no computer at all. When I joined Science and Nuclear Physics, there was no computer. Only computer that was there was my personal computer that I brought from US. So I had to actually set up everything from scratch. But I was not worried. I did not have a job. I got a one year's temporary job. But I was sure that I will find my way in. And so I never had that problem. I was confident of doing what I wanted to do, and I was willing to take that risk.
Right. In your life in Berkeley was more closely, your community, the research community with which you were working in at Berkeley would be more homogeneous, right? Because they were all working on the same specific problems and they were all interested in the same specific problems, and all your communications and all the conferences or the other kind of workshops and everything that you were attending as a PhD student would be very, very focused to very, very niche to what you were doing. Is that so? Or would you say that you actually got the opportunity right from the Berkeley days to mingle with a lot of people from a lot of different types of background?
Right. So, well, first of all, when I went to US and even before that, actually, when I was at IIT Kharagpur, I was in physics and the computers had not come. We hardly had a computer. There was a computer with punching machine system and so on, which we were not allowed to use. And somehow I was very interested from that time. I had one course in Fortran. So when I went to US and where I didn't get much chance to do work on computers, I will not go into those details how I tried to work on computers. But finally, when I joined my research work, which was at Lawrence Berkeley Lab, so my coursework was done at University of California Berkeley Physics Department, and research work was done at Lawrence Berkeley Lab, and both of them were close by. And there were a lot of joint appointments. The first thing I did was when I got access to computer was to do all kind of things other than physics. So I just started to develop Hindi fonts. When Macintosh computer was released in 1984, I made it speak Hindi and type in Hindi. And so I did everything else other than physics. And but it was very helpful to me because I was also working on computer as a modeling person. So surprisingly, my supervisor knew nothing about computer.
Okay.
So my group, which was working with him, was all experimentalists. And I was the only one who was working on computer simulation. But of course, in the Berkeley campus, as such, the physics department and electrical engineering department, there are a lot of people doing plasma physics. We used to have common seminars, common discussion, common courses. So there was a group then, and of course, there was a larger group that was there, which was connected because all the nuclear fusion community of US and Japan were using the same computer. And that was Lawrence Livermore. So that community was, of course, connected. We didn't have internet and so on at that time, but there were certain things we could do still even at those times. So it was not very homogeneous, but yes, you can say that you could find somebody who's working on this area. Like say, I'm working on a particular code. There's somebody else who's working on the same code. So that kind of thing was there. That synergy was there. Yes.
So now when you came back to India and when you joined the Saha Institute, was it like you always knew when you were in US that, okay, Saha Institute would be my destination, or you had multiple options and you were debating where to go? And because it's not really technically speaking corporate, it's neither technically speaking academia, but it's different. It's a different place. So was it always within you that?
No, not at all. Actually, I had no idea what is going on in India actually. And so around 1985, when I was close to finishing my PhD, then one of my teachers, he told me that there is a gentleman, Professor Kaur, who is working in this area, so maybe you should connect to him. And 1985, I had gone to San Diego to attend a plasma science conference, annual conference. That's where I met few Indians. One of the scientists was from Science of Nuclear Physics. One of them was from Institute of Plasma Research, one was from Physical Research Laboratory, and so on. So 4 or 5 people I met there. And through them, actually, I came to know about nuclear fusion work being done in India. And so 4 or 5 places that I came to know, I sent my application. And Science Institute of Nuclear Physics was the one that responded very fast, almost like within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, offering a one year temporary position. BARC Bombay also responded with an offer, but they said it will take little time for them. IPR, there was some glitch because the gentleman to whom I sent my profile, he was on leave for 6 months to US, so he didn't see the mail, and it was postal mail, not email at that time, and so I didn't hear from them and so on. But the BRC people told me that since you are interested in nuclear fusion, either you should join Calcutta or you should join Institute of Plasma Research, Gandhinagar. So they also suggested that one or two. And so, and as my in-laws had a house in Calcutta, so I thought, okay, at least we will have a place to stay. So that's how I decided to join Calcutta. And I was lucky that I joined it, actually. And I'll come back to that point later on.
Yeah, but looking back, in retrospection, Prabhat, what would you suggest to our, because, most of our audiences and who are watching us right now and who are going to watch us are primarily students. So, this is this happened to me also, like, when I was about to graduate, and then suddenly it dawns upon us that, hey, where to apply and which one would be the best place. Looking back, what is that something that you would want to advise, to young budding youngsters who are about to graduate and who are thinking about, shaping it up? Because there are always these 3 avenues, right? One is academia, one is government research labs, and one is corporate research.
Right. So in my area of nuclear fusion, there wasn't much academic work that was done. So I could have gone there as a physics teacher. But the one thing that I was very certain was I was very confident of myself that I could contribute to whatever I pick up. I would be able to contribute in a good way. The second thing was that when I came back to India, or even before that, I was not wanting to take a step based on what others think of me. So if others think that I should be publishing a lot of papers, I said that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on a problem, and whether it leads to a publication or not, that is not the important. The problem is important, not the paper. So let's solve the problem. Whether it results in paper and doesn't result in a paper is not important. I'm not a paper manufacturing factory. I'm a researcher. I'm solving the problem. So I was very confident that I have to work on problems which interest me, which was nuclear fusion. Right. And for that, it meant that I had to not only do modeling and other things, I had to set up computer systems. I actually got into experiments. I got into data acquisition system. So whatever needs to be done, I did that. If it meant that I had to do soldering of hundreds of components, I did that because it was necessary at a particular point of time. So nothing was untouchable to me. I never labeled myself as a modeling person. The problem was important. That is something that I would like to point out. Secondly, that I got rid of this concept that I should be publishing a lot of papers and so on. So I did not want to be judged by those criteria, even if it meant that I had to suffer because of that. I was willing to do that, because scientific community does that. And I would like to quote something here, an incident. So I had got Science Institute of Nuclear Physics, Tokamak, the nuclear fusion reactor. That was the first one in the country, 1987. So I was there from beginning. And I got it to work. I don't think I would have time to go into that. The blog details some of those. But after I got it to work to international standard, and I gave a talk in Science Institute of Nuclear Physics on that, which was the institute level talk. So all the different people had come. And there's always, these rivalries among the various groups and so on. And they have always wondered that why this group has been given so much money for this particular project. So they wanted to pull my leg. And one of the scientists, when I finished my talk, asked me this question, that how many papers have you published on this? And my answer was that if I can achieve nuclear fusion for the world or the country, and if I get zero publication, I will be very happy. My goal is to get the nuclear fusion as energy source and not the papers. So I'm not worried about that. And that created a lot of controversy. They went and complained to directors saying that, look, what this guy is saying, he's not interested in publications and so on. I said, no, I did not say that. I've said that nuclear fusion as energy source is the key and not the paper. Even if I publish hundreds of papers and I cannot get nuclear fusion, then
So
of
the
course.
paper should be like a byproduct. The paper
Yes.
maybe is kind of like a byproduct.
Yes, exactly. So paper is a byproduct, a side effect, you can say, of doing the research and not the goal. Goal cannot be the paper. But unfortunately, the scientific community, this is what is done, that how many papers we have published. So I freed myself from all of that. I said that I'm not going to worry. If it doesn't mean, it means that I will not get a job or I'll not get promotion, let me not worry about. So I freed myself from that. I freed myself from label that am I a modeling person, I'm an experimentalist, I'm a data ecosystem. I said that everything that needs to be done, I'll do it.
Yeah, I will come to that thing, and that this particular, the standpoint that you took, and I would also, in the later stage of our discussion, in the last stage of our discussion tonight, when we will talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, and I will also tell you how much intensely you have influenced me. So I will come to that. So now, any questions, guys, you just keep putting questions. If you have questions for Prabhat, just let us know, right? So otherwise we'll keep talking and we will miss out on the questions. So Prabhat, when you started working in Saha Institute, that was like where, you found that there were so many people working on a particular project, coming from different background, right? And you wouldn't have seen that kind of an environment at Berkeley. Of course, you worked with other people, you took help and you discussed a lot, but that was you and your problem. But when you come into a place like Saha Institute, you have this one common project and you have to bring all the people together and you have to get the work done. I mean, the problem solved, right? More than anything else. And can you give, we would love to know a little bit about that experience, like how, what are the challenges, of course, there's theoretically it seems so good, like, it's almost like a football match where I have the defender, I have the side flanks, I have the forward position, I have the midfield position, and I have all these nice people and they would coordinate and they would work together in a lovely way, but that what is reality when you embark on such a deadline based project and so on, and it's very, very high critical project?
So reality is very, very different. First, the teamwork doesn't work like a team many times, and it all depends on the team leader as to how they can put the team together.
Right.
So I mentioned that I was very lucky that I joined Science Institute of Nuclear Physics. The reason was it was a smaller setup. So if I had to run the machine, I would do everything. I would run the power supply, I would run the vacuum system, everything I would do myself. And since I was from modeling background, I had a systems level understanding of that. When I was working on each of these things, I could actually relate this whole thing, understand, have a top level view of the whole thing. And that was very critical. But when you go into large group where there are hundreds of people, you would be working on a small part of it. You will not get the whole picture. And that has helped me throughout my life. As to when I look at research, I look at from the top level, and which was systems thinking, and then break that problem into smaller pieces, and then look at these pieces separately, and then combine them together. So Science Institute, I was lucky because I could work on different systems. And when I did modeling, and I found out that, I'll again not go into details of those, I found out there was a possibility of a lot of impurities that my model was indicating. And to actually clean up that impurity, you have to develop something called discharge cleaning system. And one of my colleagues who was working on a system like that, I asked him that, how much time it will take you to develop the system.
What was his background, the colleague?
Yeah, he was also from physics only. He was also from plasma physics. Okay. And so he was to develop a discharge cleaning system, which was to clean the machine. I asked him that, how much time it will take. He said, it will take me 3 to 4 years. So I said, why would it take so much time? Then he said that, no, I have to import certain things from other places, high power vacuum tubes and so on. and it will take me a lot of time and so on. That time, purchasing of components in foreign exchange was very costly and time taking.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very unhappy about that, that I have to wait for 3, 4 years to understand whether my model is giving me the right information or I'm making some mistake. So I said,
Yeah.
okay, can I do this myself? When I decided, oh, let me develop a system where I don't have to import anything. I'll do everything which is available within India or Calcutta at that time. I will not go into again details, but there are a lot of barriers that were put into this. So when I decide that I will do the same work, a lot of barriers put into that. Some of this I've
It's kind of
described
like
in my
kind of
blog.
like it's almost like unheard of, sort of. I mean, that's not the way to be done, and somebody comes in and does it in a very different way. It's almost like, and that's where certain frictions keep coming, isn't it? So
Right, right. So fortunately, I got help of some other people who were in an adjacent institute, variable in the cyclotron center, we were in the same campus. I used to help them, so they helped me out with various components, other things that they were lying, in their the scrap yard. I picked up a lot of those things, and actually was successful. And I came up with a very different idea because I had this constraint of not buying things from outside. And so it got published in a review of scientific instruments, which is one of the top journals. At the same time, it did the work. The main purpose was cleaning that machine. So I cleaned the machine. I've written this story how I spoiled the system because I become a little ambitious at that particular night, whole night, when some capacitors exploded. But then finally it did work, and then I made the system even better, after that, and it worked. But there are a lot of barriers put of various kinds that I had faced because somebody thinks that's their cup of tea and I should not be getting into their area. But then I didn't bother about those things and I faced those problems and it was
right. So a lot of time this happens to even students. I have heard that especially in experimental sciences where there's a lot of lab work, and there are a lot of people working on different projects in a bigger lab, even as a PhD student. And a lot of PhD students have told me that they have faced this issue, that there is a little bit of people not giving data or not giving the right reagents or blocking things up, and there's dependency so much, and there's a delay in because of the dependencies and so much. So did you in that process also, would you also consider that you started learning the art of convincement, like how will you convince people to get things done,
yeah.
or because yeah.
So it was important, not so much a science of nuclear physics. It was a small team, and I had to do everything myself. But
Mm-hmm.
there were times, of course, I needed help. Like I have to stay overnight to carry out something. I needed one more person to be there. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
request people to stay overnight with me, even if it's not your work. And many times people did volunteer to do that. But also to convince the technical staff, and it was always what I did was to work with them. It was not that I thought that they are subordinate to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I would carry, suppose there's a heavy equipment to be carried, oscilloscope or something, I would carry it for them. So I was
Right.
not bossing around and I
Yeah.
was equal to them. I participated in that work. Then they were more willing to help me out because they thought of me as a partner, not as somebody else.
Right.
And
Right.
this was very important when I moved to Institute of Plasma Research, where there was a larger group, and I had to convince various other people to do certain things. And there it was very, very important to be able to convince them to do certain things. Again, there were frictions there also. There were frictions there, but of course, it was important. And people felt that we value them. And I was always in the front. So if, let's
Mm-hmm.
say that there were regular maintenance to be done, a lot of screw, nuts, bolts to be tightened, and so on. I would be there. I would personally be there, even if I was project leader heading the thing. And so I would personally be there in each of these projects, so people did not feel that I was somebody else was away from the scene of action. So that was very
So
helpful in terms of.
any yeah. So quickly, any interesting story during your IPR days? In Gandhinagar, right? That's in Gujarat for people who do not know IPR. So any interesting stories that you might want to share? Anything
Yeah,
exciting or
yeah.
interesting?
So, so,
Yeah.
so, so, I was in Calcutta and I got the machine tokamak as we call it. working around 1991, and with all the development I did and everything, modeling, everything helped in that process. I got it to work to international standard, and then I started planning for a superconducting tokamak at Calcutta. And there was a variable in cyclotron center, another institute in the same campus, which was part of Baba Atomic Research Center. They were working on a superconducting cyclotron. So I felt that I could convince the government to actually fund this activity because there'll be a lot of common technologies and expertise in the same campus. So when I started working on that in 1993, I remember I had gone to Brazil for International Atomic Energy Agency conference, and IPR director and others were also there. I mentioned this to them, and they said that we will support you in this. And then 94, we had a meeting at IPR to discuss collaboration. But then we were informed that IPR has got approval for 2 superconducting machines. One will be called SST-1 and second one SST-2 at 800 crores of rupees, which was again unheard of money. And then I was requested to actually shift to Gandhinagar to participate in that superconducting project. But when I joined there, I met the director, Professor Kaur. He's no more, unfortunately. He was a genius, child genius actually, child prodigy, I should say. He told me that why don't you work on the old machine, which was named Aditya. And I was a little surprised because Aditya was not working properly for 6 years. So 89 it started, 95 I've joined, 95 August. So I thought that why should I put my hand in something which a lot of people have tried, and
Right.
invited experts to come in and work from all international experts. So I requested him that I was to work on superconducting machine. He said that okay, you spend 50% time on each of these. And then he asked me to make a presentation about what are changes I want to bring in the old machine Aditya. When I made that presentation, he asked the existing team whether what do they think about this? Have they tried these things? They said we have tried everything. It doesn't help. Whatever he's saying is not useful. So he told them to let him try. What's the harm? It's not working. They didn't let me do anything for 3 months. They declared that what I'm trying to do, they've tried again and it doesn't help. And then the project leader was going away to South Korea for 6 weeks. Then the director called me and said that this is the time, whatever change you want to do, you do it now. And surprisingly, within 5 days, the machine was working to international standards. And we solved the problem. I solved the problem. And then after a few weeks, I was made the project leader of that. Of course, it led to a lot of heartburn, but that was the way it was. And so, there was acceptance was not there of new ideas. Instead, people declare that whatever he's saying is not useful. But then actually you demonstrate that it's useful, and that happens. So that's a very interesting episode that happened. And of course, many other problems also happened that I don't have time to go into details now.
So what advice, before we jump on to the next topic, what advice would you give to young researchers when they are working in something like a cross-field collaboration kind of an environment? What are the to-dos or not to-dos, like don'ts or do's, whatever that you feel you suggest that?
Yeah, so one thing that I've always said is the systems thinking. You look at the system as don't look at its parts. And a nuclear fusion reactor kind of project, or like moon mission project, or any of these, requires number of disciplines to come together. It could be electrical, mechanical, vacuum system, God knows what you have. You cannot say that I'm a physics person, or I'm a chemistry person, or I'm a mathematics person, or I'm an artificial intelligence person. If you label yourself, then you cannot do research, because each of these are multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary research. So you have to work with each of these. You have to participate in that. You have to learn things. And so one thing that should never stop is learning. And I've just crossed 60 years of age, and I still keep learning new things. I'm very excited to learn new things all the time. So that is something that is very, very important. So what we need to do is to actually make sure that the problem is more important. Discipline is not important. Your training is not important, but what needs to be done for that. And thankfully, due to internet today, it's possible to learn things very fast and move on. And then second thing that I mentioned is that many of my blogs, if people read, they'll find that you have to be grounded to reality. You should not think that you are a top scientist and you have done PhD from XYZ place. And no, you should not get into that. I have solved problems which are affecting machine where I've seen something in my village, and I applied that to fusion reactor because the grounding system was not having proper grounding. And I could solve that. These are all written by blogs. I don't want to go into details of these. But you had to be grounded. I could not say that I'm a PhD from Berkeley and I'm project leader of this machine, and so I should not be looking at what's going on. You have to be grounded to the reality. That's very, very important. I think that these are the two things I've mentioned. Yeah.
Right. So now, it's kind of like really good occasion in which we want to, nudge you more in terms of the transition that you did. This is like amazing, it's almost mind-boggling, the transition that you did from plasma physics to moon mission, right? I mean, very, very few people would actually dare to do that transition. So, what kicked you? What was that thing? Something must be there, some inspiration or something that made you go towards that. I mean, what happened really?
So when I moved to DIST, Dhirubhai Amman Institute, where both of us met, I realized that I never wanted to leave nuclear fusion work. So I was in the same city; it was close by, and so I had actually expressed my desire to continue working on nuclear fusion. But I saw there was a little bit of resistance in doing that, and I was not looking for any money. But I had said that half of the day I could come there and continue working on some of the things that I was working on, especially the control systems and so on, which has been digital control system I developed has been used in ITER now. So what I said was that and that I found there was a resistance actually from the institute for my participation. So given the university that I was in, I felt that I could be working on robotics and so on. That is how I had planned it out, because robotics had use in remote handling of the reactor and so on. So that's how I thought that I can keep connected. And then as I was looking at robots and so on, I looked at group of robots becoming very important, where they were communicating with each other. And through that, I landed up in sensor network area. And I'll not go into details, but actually before moon mission, I got into wildlife tracking.
Okay.
And that's where I saw.
So wildlife tracking was before moon.
Before moon mission, yes. And I actually started to work on agriculture. That was among few of the colleagues. We used to walk together in the campus in the evening. There were only six of us. And there actually suddenly a thing came up that Reliance Group is working on agriculture in a big way in Jamnagar. And I personally went there and talked to them. And I found a sensor network we could use there. And that's why I started working on that. Then the group split, and we were shifted to Anil Ambani's group, and that agriculture project was Mukesh Ambani. So I could not continue. And then as I was teaching a sensor network course, there were a couple of projects. One was Berkeley project, Great Duck Island project, and a Princeton project, Jebranil project, where they used sensor network for wildlife tracking. I was showing this as a case study to students. And I realized that when these people started, they also knew nothing. So I said, okay, look, I also know nothing. So if they can start, why not I start? So I gave this as project to students, 10 projects to students. And then 2 or 3 of them were reasonably good. Then I started to connect to wildlife researchers. And that's how I got into that. I will share one story later on when we get time. Sure. It's important for this cross-disciplinary thing. And that's how I got into wildlife tracking area. And then when I was giving a talk at ISRO's Space Application Center, they used to invite me to give talks to their new entries as a special talk, not related to space. So I talked about this wildlife research and sensor network concept. I mentioned casually that I don't know whether the sensor network can be used on the moon mission. And that was the beginning of this. So the host told me that you talk to physicists about this. And eventually, things led one thing led to another, and eventually I was asked that we want to find water on the moon in the permanently shadowed regions of the moon, and maybe your sensor network concept can be useful. That's how I got involved, and I was project funding we submitted for. I was the principal investigator, and PRL, which was the key institute in this, became the co-PI. That's how I got into space mission. But it was the wildlife talk that I gave that actually helped in this process. But I would like to mention here very important for the topic that we're discussing. When I went to Wildlife Institute of India, again, first near to our university, there's the Indora Nature Park very close by. I don't know if you visited that. I've gone there that, I went and talked to the director there that my working sensor network may have some use. Then after a couple of days, a scientist who was not in the meeting, he was outside, he somewhat heard something. He came to meet me. And he said that what you're talking about is very interesting. I've done PhD from Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun. And so let me put you in touch with a gentleman there who would be very interested in this. He put me in touch. I visited, Dehradun, and I gave a talk to them. And I asked them, this kind of work, can you suggest you have some problems that can be solved through this? So always this I have found is that when you approach them, they have no idea, what you're talking about. So they only think from their point of view that, they are doing certain work. I'm doing this work. Can you enhance it a little bit? Or I'm buying an equipment which has this problem. Can you improve that? With whatever they are doing. So I made a very interesting statement to them. I said that, look, don't worry about what you're doing and how you're doing. Imagine that God has given all the power. And now you tell me what you want, what data you want. Don't worry about how you're going to do that. That is my problem. You just think of the problem that you are solving and give me that, and I'll solve. So then they opened up and they came up with 12 different ideas. And then out of that, before we finally decided to work on that, all 12 was very difficult. That's how I got into wildlife research. And it was very useful because they thought that, after 1 year I went back, they invited me to give a talk. They felt that there's a new revolution happening because of the technological field. So I had to put people at, rest, that let them not worry about technology part. Let them just think about what they want to do. I will take care of their problem. That was a big, big change. And I would like to also mention this was very important for this discussion, was that when I went to wildlife research, I had no idea, I had no background in that. What I found that you have to spend time with them so that you become familiar to them. You are like friend to them. If you send a formal request or something, it will not happen. But you have to be part of that group. You have to understand the lingo, and you're all talking English or whatever language you speak in, but jargons are different. You have to understand. You have to devote time in developing relationship. And then a phone call was enough to get the information rather than sending a lot of official communication, which would never fetch you anything. So developing relations was important, being comfortable with them, and also assuring them that you are useful to them. They should not think that you are wasting their time. So these were good lessons to connect to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that is so important. What you just said is like to put oneself in their community, how that community think, not just think, but probably you would also agree with me how that community evolved, right? And you have to have certain ideas, certain understanding of whenever you're doing cross-disciplinary, like how the disciplinary evolved into what they are and how they think, how what are the different major schools in that particular field, and you in that way, if that is happening, then there can be always a nice bonding and always a nice collaboration towards one single goal. Right. So a lot of that, what I see, what happens, and I have been part of those situations where everybody is thinking in their own way, which is good in some sense because everybody has to bring their own perspective, but nobody likes to think in the other person's way. And then what happens is that there's always this conflict and nothing gets going. Right. So you are so right about that part. So let me see if continue.
Yeah, one more in fact incident I'll give you. When I joined DICT, I was asked to also look at the R&D activity of the university. And Vinita Desai, you would know her. She joined from NID as an animation expert and other things. She was asked to meet me and discuss research problem. And I think we met 2 to 3 times, and I didn't understand what she was talking about, and she didn't understand what I was talking about. Probably we were saying the same thing, but in different way. It took a number of sittings to actually understand that we are talking of the same thing in our own way. So we have to have the patience to understand each other because we all express, in different way. So that is very important in cross-disciplinary areas.
Right. So while you were doing, wildlife tracking, and then you went into moon mission. It was almost, moon mission, and it was almost like it looks serendipitous when you think of it from an outsider's point of view. But if you look at it carefully, I think you will agree, Prabhat, that because you were exploring, you were always curious, and you were always exploring different territories, and that's why this serendipitous things keeps happening to you. And that's why from wildlife.
I would like to mention here this particular word that you used. So for the moon mission thing, when it was in collaboration with PRL, and I was a PI, I had to make a presentation to the committee for funding. And the PRL director was the chief scientist. He was also sitting there, the chairman of a committee from TIFAC. And when I started to make my presentation, after 3, 4, 5 minutes, the chairman of the committee said that you're talking stupid. You sit down. You don't know what you're talking about. This is nonsense. You're talking of something being done in 150 grams. I guarantee you it will not be happening before less than 6 kg of weight. And so you just sit down and you have no idea what you're talking. So then PR director said that let him at least listen to his project. So I was allowed to complete my presentation and it got funded. But next year, the same gentleman, when we went for review, was supporting me, who had told me to sit down, that you don't know what's going on. So you would face a lot of problems when you come with new ideas. And second thing I would tell you is that in 2010 March, I was asked, in fact, in February, I was asked to give the plenary talk in the Planetary Exploration Group, the keynote address to the Planetary Exploration Group, which I had not even done much. I just started working. And then after 2-3 weeks of that, I was asked to help with Chandrayaan-II, the moon mission, second one, with the key part of that when it lands on the moon, every single work that rover has to do should be done by a system that I should develop. When I got that email, I was very surprised. I thought somebody was joking. But I found they were quite serious. I'll not go into details. I've written this out again in blog. But I asked them this question, why are you asking me? I don't have any expertise in this area. They said that we cannot think of anybody else who can think or innovate, because this requires a lot of new thinking. Within the ISRO, we will not have people who can think newly. So they said that, no, we need a completely new thinking and we believe that you can do it. And so that's how I came up, and I was given 1 month's time. I've written all these details. But it was that people had this faith that I would be able to come up with new ideas, not conventional ones, which everybody does. So that was very important for others to have faith in me.
And now, you did another kind of detour, sort of like, you were solving problems which were very at a macro level, and then suddenly you came in at a micro level, and you started working on disability or disorders, disability, stuff on related to disabilities. So can you just one quick very important project that you feel, and you had to bring together different types of people to actually get that thing done, something that you are very proud of, that this you could pull off. But before that also, I would like to also first understand, like from the macro level, for those researchers who do things at a macro level, like your moon, and before that wildlife, and before that you were doing plasma, and then suddenly bringing yourself down to the individual at a societal level.
Yeah, so actually, I don't see any difference as such. Each of these is a problem that needs to be solved. In one case, I was working on projects like moon mission or nuclear fusion. They were high science projects with no clear help to society in short term, maybe long term, of course.
Right.
But due to a student project, I got involved with disability sector. We used to have a design project requirement, and 2 girls, Ramya and Pallavi, I always like to take their name. They wanted to work with me, and then somehow they got into disability. Again, I will not talk about, don't have time to go into details. That's I got into that, and I felt that there is something here that I could help. I could make change in life of people. And I was not sure, because we were starting to work because we thought we can do a technology, but whether it will help a person, we never knew. So initially we developed technology thinking what we wanted to do, what we were capable of doing that. But then I had to connect to people who needed this, and I had to understand their needs. And so I had to actually again be accepted by that group. And actually I am now considered part of that. Each of these groups considers me part of them. They think that I am their friend. And so they come to me. So I did that, and I started to see that I could make somebody's life, I could change within a few weeks' work and so on. So mostly what I did was to look at somebody's problem. And disability sector is such that there are a lot of unique problems. I mean, for example, I worked on cerebral palsy affected patients. I have not met 2 persons with similar requirement. Each one is unique. So each one is a problem to be solved. And then something interesting happened. And this is, I would like to tell the researchers that most time people do PhD, and they think that the rest of life they'll keep doing same work. They'll do a little bit incremental work and so on. They even connect to their own supervisor, to the labs they worked in, and they want to continue doing their work. But research is the PhD is only a training process in that. So normally what we do is that we do what we can do rather than what needs to be done. I have been the opposite camp. I said what needs to be done is what needs to be done, not what I can do. But something else happened, in this area of disability that you mentioned. A newspaper writer, actually, I gave a talk in Patna and I talked about my work on disability. He misquoted me. So I had done something based on gestures, and wrote that I've done something based on thoughts. And he published with the headline that he's developed something based on thoughts. And I told myself, God, what this guy has done now is totally changed the whole thing. But then to prove him right, I said that, okay, can I do this? Can I use thoughts as a way to make people do things? So started working brain-computer interface in 2010. In 2011, I was successful. And that became a very important work of my life where actually I have changed many people's life. And again, I'm not going to details of that. These stories are there in my blog. And then today, actually, I'm working right now. Also, one of my research scholars is working with me on using brain-computer interface to identify multiple intelligence in children to make them learn much better. And I've done many work to brain-computer interface due to that. That was incident because a journalist had made a mistake, and I wanted to make sure that I prove him correct since he's done that. That was a changing moment.
Great.
So that was very
Great.
interesting work, and I'm proud of that. Yeah.
Great. So, while you were doing so intense work at a macro level, at a micro level, intense research, and then suddenly, all of a sudden, you shift yourself into more of a administrator, and you become the director of a place like TIFAC. Now, why? What inspired you, or what propelled you towards that direction? Because it's kind of like from the hardcore researcher, you go into technology administration.
So it's a very, very funny incident, actually. I used to travel. See, to help people with disability, I have to travel to them. They cannot come to me. So I have to go to and meet them. And so whenever I would travel anywhere for official purpose or whatever, I would spend extra day, stay there. Reliance Group used to have guest houses everywhere. So, I used to get that accommodation free, and sometimes food was also free. So I used to travel wherever, and I used to make this arrangement to stay an extra day. Let's say I have a meeting on Friday, or a talk on Friday, or stay on Saturday, or something on Monday, I'll stay on Sunday. And I used to go and spend time with NGOs and others working with disability so that I could connect to them. So I needed to travel to meet them, and I didn't have the money to pay for that. So I saw this TIFAC, executive director, head of the institute, and an application was invited for that. So I thought, okay, let me apply. If they call me, they'll pay me airfare, so I can travel to Delhi and again continue my work with the thing. That was the only reason I applied. I had no interest in joining that. I didn't know much about the place, and so I applied there. And surprisingly, for 8 months I didn't hear, and suddenly I hear that they're shortlisted and called me. So I very unwillingly went there, and I had some health problems, but doctor let me go there. Not going to those details. And Dr. Mashelkar was chairman of the committee. He looked at my profile, and I was there only for to face the interview so that I can justify my travel. And if I don't attend that, they'll be unhappy, not pay my travel fare. So he kept talking about it, and 80% of the time he talked, and I was not bothered at all. I was not interested in the position, so I answered left, right, whatever they asked. And I came out, and after 2-3 days, I get a call that I've been selected. The gentleman who was calling, he used to handle plasma physics research funds from DST. So I used to meet him once in a while, but I was not in touch with him for maybe 10-15 years, maybe 10 years at least since I was in DST. So he convinced me that no, it's a good position, and that's very important that you move in here and so on. And then I said, okay, fine, I'll move there. And he convinced me that it's a very important organization. But when I was going there, somebody in IIM Ahmedabad, I will not take his name, he told me, where are you going? This is a dead institute. Then I told him that, look, my work starts when something is dead, when something is thriving, I'm not needed. And so I went there, and actually at that time, Technology Vision 2035 work had started being done. Technology Vision 2020 was in 1996. At the time, Dr. Kalam used to be chairman. At my time, Dr. Kakotkar was chairman. And so we developed this document, Technology Vision 2035. I don't know if you can see this correctly, Technology Vision 2035. And this is actually, it says Technology Vision but it's actually a vision for the country, for the quality of life. So we made a paradigm shift. We moved from India to Indians. We don't talk about developed India. We talk about developing the quality of life of Indian citizens. And fortunately, I could get the Prime Minister to write the foreword to this document. And so he wrote the foreword to this document. And I don't know if you can notice his picture there. He wrote the foreword. He launched it 5 years ago, and he also directed all the ministries and government departments to follow this document. And this became a landmark because everybody started to follow this. Niti Aayog was given this task to coordinate the effort. So before I left TIFAC after my 5 years, I made a presentation there. And today, actually, for the viewers, I would like to inform that I'm trying to set up a foundation called Foundation 2035. We'll track India's progress. We just completed about 5 years. We're going to complete on 3rd January 2021. And recently, some people have come forward and they said that we'll actually make it a UN associate, and we will not only use this for India, but also for the rest of the world. And so there's a group which is volunteering to do this. So this is another important task that I'm involved with right now, is trying to monitor the India's progress. And a lot of things that are happening in India have happened because of this document, including technologies like Hyperloop or many other things which I have mentioned here, like Anemia Mukt Bharat campaign, Nutrition India campaign, railway to Leh and Tawang. All of these happened because of this document. A lot of waterways have come up because of this document. So this document has made a lot of impact across the country.
So TIFAC is another place, where you being always the connecting the dots sort of a person, probably that might have helped you a lot in actually, doing justice to that position. Because you could always see things at a system level and how one thing connects with the other, because it's not just pure physics research that you were doing. You were working on so many other different projects, and you were trying to figure out how one thing would connect with the other and so on and so forth, right? And so you were also meeting with people from multiple different backgrounds, and you had to bring them together and form committees, form groups, and to push things forward. Isn't that so?
Yeah. So two things I would like to mention that was very interesting experience in TIFAC. One was that I was very new to this area of being able to see future, although most of my work was very futuristic. So in fact, just before joining TIFAC, and I joined TIFAC in April of 2018, just 1 month before, there was an event which was Indo-UK workshop on foresight, how to foresee future. And I was invited because I was about to join, and so I made a presentation. At the end of the workshop, we identified 30 technology areas which were futuristic. And I found that I have worked on 6 of them. In fact, the back side of this document actually showed some of those technologies. And I found that sensor network or brain-computer interface or nuclear fusion, all of them found place in out of 30 of them, 6 I had personally worked upon. But what was interesting to see was that when I went to TIFAC, and there were committees set up to work in different areas, and when I looked at draft, I found that nobody was talking about 2035. They were only talking about next 2 to 3 years, 5 years time scale. I said that how can we make a document of 2035? And then I had to do 2 things. I had to actually connect to international organizations which were doing similar kind of work, and then to train my TIFAC scientists in doing this kind of work. And normally people told me that, okay, why don't you send them abroad and so on. I said, look, if they know zero and send them abroad, it's useless. We have to first build the capability. So I requested all the scientists to participate in internal training process by helping each other. So each one will pick up a topic, give talks, we form groups. So it's all done internal training. And slowly we started to grow up in that area. And most of the work was done by internal TIFAC scientists, not by outside experts. Then when I visited the first, there was a government foresight organization network, which was a network of international organizations. It was my first experience of this kind. And I was not sure that, the kind of work they are doing, are we way behind or so on. So I wanted to visit them and to discuss with them and so on. So I participated, I think it was in Brussels, the first meeting. And that was my first experience of that kind. Then I offered that I will host a meeting in 2000. So 2013 I had gone. 2015 I said I will host this meeting in Delhi. And then I realized that actually we are not very far behind after I started attending this mission. And we became an important part of this government foresight network. And actually 2016 I was there in World Future Society in US, where a US expert, Canada expert, myself and Korea, four of us participated in thinking about future. And last year also, I was invited to South Korea to discuss about World at 2050. So suddenly, out of nowhere, I've become recognized now as a futurist, foresight expert. I participate in the various judging events and so on. Just a few months back, I did the same thing. So I had to learn myself. At the same time, I had to make sure that I encouraged other TIFAC scientists. And then after they had done some amount of development, learning and so on, I also started to send them abroad to participate in this. So they also have the confidence. So then we were sure that, kind of work we were doing was no inferior to anybody else. We had that confidence. Another thing that I would like to mention is that when preparing this document, in fact, I'm writing a blog which I have not completed on this making of this document where I share some of this experience. I was trying to understand that what should be our objective. And I came across a document that was very interesting. It was talked about which countries, women's life, I think it was a World Economic Forum, which has come up with a document which talked about rating various countries where women's life is much better, quality of life of women is much better. Okay. So I looked at the various parameters that was used to judge that, and I was very surprised. I had never thought from that point of view. Then actually we decided that we will look at quality of life of Indians, and we identified 12 parameters, which is the key issue that we have discussed in this. And that document actually with the group that I was working on changed the mindset. The second thing that I realized that we had to work in a very different way. And so instead of coming to a meeting room and spending 9 to 5:30 time, we were staying in a hotel. We booked a hotel room, meeting room there, and we worked, day and night. So we were not in casual dress. We would eat whenever we feel like. We go and sleep in the room whenever we feel like, and you continue working. We used to book that for 24 hours, and that became our modus operandi, where we, the group which are working, will stay together for 3 days, 4 days at a stretch at a particular location, and not have to travel anything. And you be in casual dress. You should feel comfortable, not feel that you have come for a meeting, and discuss. At stretch. Sometimes just for one word, we'll discuss for half an hour. So those changes was very helpful in coming up with this document. One more thing I did was to actually to design this properly, to make it professional looking. And if you see this document, I don't know if it's difficult to say, you will see that it's very well designed, a lot of visually appealing things. And initially there was a lot of apprehension. Even Dr. Kakutkar, who was my chairman, also chairman of the ethics committee of this, scientist Dr. Goswami, who was heading this project. All of them said that it was looking too judgy and so on. But eventually, when the designers did the final job, they all were very happy. And this set a standard for government documents, because typically government documents are boring, they look unappealing. So that was also very important to package the thing properly, even if it is scientific information and so on. How do you package it? And infographics, everything we have used this to communicate properly. That was important.
We have a question, Prabhat, and then we will go to the final thing, which is kind of like the most exciting thing for you as of now. So Aniket Mendele, hi Aniket. Your question is for Prabhat. Would love to know your thoughts on how can robotics transform our present into a more futuristic society. Can we see robots all over the place?
So in 2015, I had organized a discussion on, it was Future of Brain, a race between mind and machine. I think that video is there on the YouTube. And we were discussing one very important thing was, can robots become conscious or machines become conscious? Okay. And that was important. And I had, I gave the initial talk, and it's a very interesting talk. And there were 4 panelists. One of them was a biology expert from National Brain Research Center. One was a neurology expert, who was Dr. M. Gauri Devi. She was vice chancellor from Nimhans. There was an expert from cognitive science. And there was a spiritual expert, Dalai Lama's team in Delhi, Geshe-la Dorji Damsul. I had 4 of these people looking at this from different point of view. And the thing I had made, I said that it will take about 10 years for us to come to know whether robots become conscious or not. Okay. And and if they become conscious, then of course we never know how they're going to deal with humans, because we are the most resource wasting people. We have not been careful on the preserving
Right.
our earth. And
Right.
so robots can take over this earth if they become conscious. If not, then we may be able to control them. But there's also ethical thing. In fact, in 2017, I had organized a discussion in Delhi on exponential technology, and I talked about how if you create a robot which has feelings, then can you destroy that robot? So just like you give birth to a baby and you cannot kill, similarly, if you create a robot which has feelings, I showed a little video clip there, which changed perception in the mind of people that you can create a robot, and if it becomes conscious, it has feelings and so on, you cannot destroy. You don't have the right to take away. So I discussed, actually developed, I put up this point that we should have a so-called human rights for robots. So I do see robots coming in a big way in many areas. The only part, this consciousness part, is not certain as of now. There are people who think that consciousness is within our brain. There are people who think that consciousness has something to do with outside our brain. The people who hold this view that everything is within our brain, they think that if you can replicate the brain, we'll be able to also have consciousness. And there's a group of people who doesn't think that way. But what is likely, in fact, I'm personally working on something called digital avatar. In fact, I want to create Dr. Kalam. Will be something that will look like human being. Every test you do will look like that. But whether it's really conscious, we don't know. It's like you put all the tests, it will pass in all the tests. But we
So all
still
the
don't know
Turing
whether it's
tests that
conscious.
they got.
Yeah, so like
So
that, So we will never know whether actually it's really a human consciousness that it has, or it's something else. It's just that it's passing all the tests that we do.
I think, Prabhat, it is time to take on the final topic, which is so exciting. So you are currently working on something which you used to be working on something which just recently it was quite clandestine, quite going on, many things going on, and then finally things are coming onto the surface, and it has a lot to be. Now we are going to get to see an entrepreneurial side of Dr. Prabhat Ranjan, right? So, and it really, I can relate to that a lot more, because I can be before I let you talk about that. I just want to tell everyone who is using Rax or is about to use Rax, thinking about Rax. I still remember this one car drive where Prabhat was taking me back from Ahmedabad to Gandhinagar, and he was talking about hands-on research, like research that comes to tangible, something that is tangible, something that people can see value, and publications and all these other things are essentially should be the byproduct or side effect, as what Prabhat termed it. At that time, I wouldn't say that I was totally convinced, because I was very new. Prabhat, if you remember, I was just in the university, just joined the university as an assistant faculty, but it left a very, very indelible impression on me. And I totally I tell many people that I totally owe to you, that that seed came inside me, and that kind of like got nurtured through multiple different other influences. And finally, if you see me doing Rags, that's because of that day and I was in your car and you were driving me back from Ahmedabad to Gandhinagar. Now over to you. Tell us about what you're doing.
Well, why did I first come back to education after TIFAC? One was that this Technology Vision 2035 document, it's a vision for the country, and there are 12 roadmaps to achieve that vision. And I put education, if you see the list of those 12, I put education on the top. Each of these, there is a separate roadmap. So I wanted to come back to education, actually, because I felt that education is the key to India's success. We need to make change in the education. And so I wanted to come back as Vice Chancellor of University, not as a professor, because then I would not be able to make the changes that were necessary. Unfortunately, Patil International University was just coming up. So I'm the founder Vice Chancellor. So I came in here and I started to make changes. And it has resulted in changes across the country, because computer science engineering curriculum that I developed in 2019 actually was reflected in 2020. I was part of a committee of AICT which actually created new curriculums. And 2020 actually has been influenced tremendously by what I did in 2019. But at the same time, what was clear to me is that research has to be an important part of any university that you create. So I was working on this, and people were coming in touch with me. I've been working on healthcare also and so on. I don't have time to go into those details, but I'm able to cure many people, and I think I have solutions to most of the chronic health problems, which I want to scientifically prove. One or two of these I have shared on my blog. But the gentleman, Dr. Akash Singh, came in touch with me, who is based out of US. He's himself an inventor, but also investor. And he came in touch with me through some common people, and he came and met me in Pune. And when I go to meet my daughter in California, he met me there, so he's in Silicon Valley. And he said that we'll work on a space trying to develop a launch vehicle which will take small payloads into space at very economical cost. Like what Elon Musk is doing right now, he's sending thousands of satellites for his Skylink work. So he felt that there was a market there. So he said that we'll set up something under your guidance. And he appointed a person just before the pandemic hit. So engineer joined who had some experience, but then pandemic hit and everything got stopped. The gentleman left, the university was closed, and everything happened. And I was also not talking about it, everything was uncertain. Suddenly, a couple of months back again, he started to talk to me again. And then I don't know how it happened. Suddenly he said that, let's work on nuclear fusion. So I was very surprised that I had never imagined that the area that was my first love, where I spent 20 years. Yeah, I would have, anyway, I will come back to that because was always government funded. And more so in India, actually. Although for last 4 or 5 years, I was talking about it. Many talks I have given at national level and so on. I have talked about this, that nuclear fusion is coming much closer than what we expect. And private funding is increasing day by day. So I've talked about this, but I wasn't sure that I would be involved. And in India, something like this can happen. So Akash, I told him that, look, this is very uncertain and very difficult. It's very costly. He said that, no, don't worry about that. Okay. That's our burden. And so exactly, yeah. In fact, exactly 1 month ago, on 12th November, we had an hour and a half meeting. He'd also brought in another gentleman who is CEO of Stanford Ventures, who is also very keen, in fact. And we discussed in detail. And then he set up a team to support me in this, to actually plan out what we want to do. And I named this project as Chandrayaan. Chandrayaan in Sanskrit means fusion. Nuclear fusion is Navikiya Chandrayaan. So I thought I'll call this project Chandrayaan. And fortunately, I announced this just on 3rd December in a Bihar Science Conference where I was talking about nuclear fusion in India, past, present, and future. I announced this. Akash also made an announcement saying that by early 2021, this project will start in India. Actually, right. And so we are very seriously working on this. And surprisingly, I'm finding support from all over the world. So people are coming forward who wanted to work in this area. Either they came back to India, continued to work, or they're abroad. They have been supporting me. Actually, they're sending the CV and so on. So I'm very excited that first time in India, private initiative nuclear fusion is happening. I'm personally involved in that in a direct way. And maybe we will be able to do this development at 15 to 20 times lower cost than what it costs to be in Western world. And then again, I'm forming the team right now. Team is going very, very important. We are also going to decide what is the pathway to do that. But we are focusing on 3 aspects. One is, of course, the nuclear fusion for energy. But second is nuclear fusion also to develop, to make radioisotopes for medical purposes, both for diagnostics as well as therapy purpose, which we see has an immediate market, in fact. And the third is space propulsion. So I'm coming back to space again. Space propulsion, which will be a little longer term as compared to energy, but it may happen simultaneously also. And actually, my goal is to do asteroid mining, which I've been talking about for the last 4 or 5 years, where between Mars and Jupiter, there's asteroid belt, which is tremendous wealth, that if you take that mineral wealth and then divide them on all the people on the earth, everybody will get $100 billion. So how do we do that? Japan has just brought a sample from there. NASA is trying to do this. So we see robotics playing a very important role, nuclear fusion and space propulsion is playing a very important role. So all of this is coming together. Many of my dreams that I have had of developing new areas of technology is happening through this nuclear fusion work. And I'm very excited. It's changing the whole science and technology gamut of the country, where we private industry is coming up to support a very uncertain but very rewarding technology, very important for humanities. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so Prabhat, before wrapping up, I have a question from someone who is very special to both of us, Professor Anil Roy. And his question is, that is here. Yeah. How would you compare the research culture or the ecosystem that exists in India vis-a-vis, let's say, abroad, like in US or Germany? And and in the context of, let's say, a PhD student who has completed his PhD in India and would want to go for, let's say, a postdoc in, so he has been bred in a particular kind of Indian environment, research environment, and now let's say that particular person is looking for postdoc opportunities in US or in Germany. So what kind of suggestions or what kind of advice would you give? I mean, what is the culture change in terms of the research culture?
Okay, so first thing is that whether maybe there's a group in India which is doing equally good research as somewhere else, but the cultural exposure is very, very important. And so I always encourage people to be able to go to different places in the world and work there, to at least be exposed to the way of their work, the way they think, the way they interact. That is very important for anybody to be exposed to. If you want to work at international level, you have to be able to expose to the different working culture. That is very important. The second thing, of course,
Prabhat, sorry to interrupt, but by working culture, do you mean the process?
Yeah, how do you approach a problem? In fact, when I was in Berkeley and there was for qualifying exam, there was an interview, and they gave me a problem to solve, and I was solving it mathematically. And they told, okay, we know Indians are very good in mathematics. You don't do the mathematics directly, tell me the answer. Okay. So people expect that you will be good in mathematics, you are coming from India, because our education system is very rigorous in that sense. So each institute, each country, each research lab or university has its own culture. Berkeley has a very open culture where you have a weird thinking. You'll find somebody else with the same kind of weird thinking. So you'll be able to come across somebody. So these exposures are very, very important, and I felt that has shaped me very nicely. But it's not only US; it's also within India. I have lived in, started my education in a municipal school with just one hut, one room, which was a mud thing. I worked in Anil Roy and me share the same school, Netrati school, where in Gurukul type system, in IIT Kharagpur, in Delhi University, at Berkeley. And then of course I worked in research labs, I worked with governments. I've been part of both of these, cultures of different kinds. So both within India as well as abroad, it was very, very important for me to be exposed. So I would request people to be exposed, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 years time, or for short time. I think it's help. I've been to China. Their approach is different. I think I've lost Sourish. Let me see whether it comes back to that. I think he has to reconnect. But in the meantime, I would like to say that being part of government, both government labs, being part of a private university, right now I'm a vice chancellor of a private university, I've been part of government think tank. It has given me exposure within India also of looking at problem in different way. And of course, the way you deal with a problem in government, the way you deal with in the private sector is different. And personally, I've benefited from exposure of different kinds within India as well as abroad. And just to share with you, while Sourish comes back, is that when I went to US and I finished my PhD in '86, normally for research scholars, if they go abroad, either as postdoc or they do PhD, and let's say they come back to India, they want to remain connected and they want to continue the same kind of work. Surprisingly, of course, that time it was not so easy to be well connected. I actually did not go back to US for 22 years. And because I was very busy with my work, and only after 22 years I went back to US. And of course, after that, I've been going, almost every year or every 2 years, 2 years, both for personal reasons as well as official reasons. And so that I would say that today India is very different from what we were at that time. Earlier, when we used to go abroad to go to international conferences, we will come to know new things. But today, what I've noticed because of internet for last, about 20, 25 years that India has had internet and the world has internet, we find that the same information that is available abroad is available to you. Today, if you go abroad to some lab, they'll tell you that, you go and visit this particular website and you can see all the information there. So the information gap is no longer there. The India has the advantage that because of low cost of development and having plenty of talented people, we are able to do certain things much faster than others can do abroad. So a lot of my students who went abroad, and especially I remember at University of Florida, Gainesville, we used to have almost large number of my students. And they told me that after working my lab in Gandhinagar, when they used to go abroad, they felt that they are coming from US to India, not vice versa, because they felt that the kind of technology that we were working in my lab was much superior to what they were doing there. So they used to always, during the research work, they used to ask me always, if they needed to work on new area, they used to ask me that whether I have worked on that area already or not. And more often than not, it was, I would be able to share my experience of doing that because I could have large number of students. Other thing that I found in India that was suitable was that undergraduate students were very, very active and they used to participate in research work. But then the way we used to work with research, undergraduate research students, is very different from students who are doing PhD and so on. Whereas in US, the bulk work is done by PhD students. In India, I found it was very easy to engage with undergraduate students, but the way you engage with them was very, very different. It will not be the same way that you do with graduate student. One more point that I noticed in Indian situation was that because today being able to buy things has become easy. So for last 10, 15 years, I could use credit card and so on and to buy things. Only thing was that in US probably something may come in a day or two, and here it may take 7 to 10 days to come. But that was okay because I could get that in time and I could have people to work on this. I visited many US labs and I used to find that professors there would have purchased the same components or same kits, but they didn't have a student to work on that project. So because of that, the things were there, but they didn't have the students' power. But yeah, I think, sorry, I had lost you, so I was just talking on my own. I was just mentioning that today there's no information gap between India and US or anywhere else. So, but it's cheaper to get talented manpower in India, so we are able to do much more work. And I would just mention one more thing that one of my students, who is also a colleague of mine, he was in US for 10 years. He's also AI ML expert and also blockchain and cryptocurrency expert. He was telling me that whenever they faced a problem there, he went to US. He did not have a fellowship actually, so he financed his first semester by himself, and he was from a farmer's family. He joined a small satellite club there, and in the first few weeks they were discussing. Used to visit them. They were discussing a problem how to solve. And then this fellow gets up and says that, this is how we can solve, because he had learned all these things in my lab in Gandhinagar. And then immediately next day he gets a mail from a faculty member he was supervising, that he was the mentor for that why don't you join my group? And so he immediately got the offer to join that. And that became a changing point because he had learned all these things in Gandhinagar before he went, and he was knowing more than the people there. So today, India is in a position that we can deliver, and that's why I'm very excited about the nuclear fusion initiative that we have taken up. We can do it at much lower cost. We can do it faster as compared to others.
Great. So, Prabhat, this is where I guess we have already overshot a little bit. So I think we have to wrap up for today's discussion. But there's so many other topics that we would love to discuss with you, and hopefully we can bring you back for another appearance in our Saturdays with Sourish. And thanks a lot for giving us the time. And thanks a lot all of you to stay together for this session and to listen to what Pravada had to share with you. And I hope that you have taken a lot of things back and a lot of encouragement, a lot of inspiration, a lot of what we call as the the Josh, so to say, what we call in India, as to look, let's do go forward and let's do something which is meaningful, which is impactful, and we can do it together. We can bring different mindset, different background, different disciplines together, but at the same time, we can try to understand each other, how we work, how other people work, and then bring together ideas, all different types of ideas, not thinking the ideas in the way we have been trained, but also to go out of the box and to think about whether we can bring ideas from other disciplines, other areas, and look at the same problem in a very different way, right? And be resourceful. Be resourceful at the same time. I think that would be the takeaway for tonight. Prabhada, thanks a lot
Yeah,
for
thanks, Sourish, actually for inviting me on your birthday. It's a special honor for me. You've taken time out of your birthday celebration. But last point I would like to mention is that one more thing that I felt was that you have to help others without
right,
expectation, but you have to invest in
right.
that relationship, and that helps you in long term. When you need some help, they are willing to help. So when you help others without any consideration, it comes back to you in some other form. That was very, very useful.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. With that note, we conclude tonight's Saturday's with Sourish. Stay tuned
Thank
for next weekend. We will have another celebrity guest.
thank
Okay,
you.
bye
Thank
bye.
you all. Bye.
Yeah.